Hello, and we're excited to get to talk to you. And I don't really think about all of the ins and outs of what goes on in our world all the time. And to a large degree, I'm a voracious reader, and I tend to read the big epics and the panoramic view as opposed to the snapshots. But it is certainly a unique and amazing time that we're living in. And it brings us to a place to where it is incumbent on us, no matter how lonely that may be, to give deep and critical thought to the issues at hand. And we're going to do that. We're going to unpack some of those things in the very near future. And what I want you to understand is that I'm really not just interested in just kind of doing, slapstick thrown together. I want to convey my thoughts in a rational, logical, and systematic way. It's the way I think. It's the way I read. It's the way I study. And you have to realize that truth is never going to help you win a popularity contest. And if we were trying to be the most popular person in the world, it is without a doubt we would not have gotten into being the preachers of the gospel and the articulators of the truth and the complexities around the kingdom of God. Now, it can be lonely out there, and you can feel alone. And don't feel alone in the sense, there is an end to all things, no matter how great they are. And there will be an end of the age. There will be an end of time or the world as we know it. And these current events may at this point feel like you are already there. And by goodness, you're setting on the precipice of the end of all things. I want to encourage you. Keep reading, keep studying, keep applying yourself, and don't give up, because there's a lot to be said about those who are determined that they're going to pursue, and there's a lot of things that people don't know, and it's your job to be a quiet, rational, articulating voice that is not given to the drama or the pandemonium, but that takes apart the issues one by one. Next week, I've already done a special episode, and this week I'll drop another special episode around the concept of Israel and modern day Israel. And I want to do an episode that talks about, is the modern nation, secular nation of Israel, are those the chosen people of God? And I'd like to answer that biblically and apply a worldview. Now, that will be a theology that I will lay out and extrapolate on the podcast. But for the present, right now, I just want to talk about some simple things to help people navigate through the current crises. And I'm going to get into the loneliness of being a sole or single voice of reason, and maybe in your family, in your community, or in your relationships. There's a lot of things, basic facts that people do not know, and they don't take the time to read it. Like one of the facts that everybody needs to be cognizant of is that Israel is the only country in the Middle East that has been an uninterrupted democracy since its founding in 1948. Every other country has vacillated between some level or form of the democratic experiment and a monarchy or a tyranny at worst. And so after the United Nations granted the Jews a state following the horrors of the Holocaust, the Arabs got granted the same state as well. And they got granted a state at that time, but they chose to refuse it and start a war. Another thing that I'm hearing in the news is that Israel is a colonialist state. That's absurd, as it is a refuge state that was decolonized from British rule. So British rule was the colonial footprint. And British colonialization abdicated their rights on the land and abdicated it from British rule to them. Another thing that's deeply troubling to me as I listen and watch some of the news is that people call Israel an apartheid state, which is absurd when you know that the third largest political party in Israel is an Arab party. If it was an apartheid state, you couldn't have an opposing Arab party, political party in it. So by the definition of apartheid, it cannot be called that. Another thing is that some people see the entire problem in the Middle East as an Israeli-Palestinian conflict, kind of a David and Goliath, strong man, little man thing. And the story that pits an army less people, the Palestinians, against one of the most militarily advanced and technologically advanced societies in the world, which is Israel. It's easy to cheer for the underdog, and I think that's what people are doing. But this dynamic is categorically not the case. The conflict is not between Palestinians and Israel people, but rather between the whole Arab world and Israel. 21 Arab countries, a population of approximately 423 million people against the Jewish state, which has a population of approximately 9 million people. So when you're getting into in that matchup, who is the David and who is the Goliath? Obviously, it's the Arab Union. And so you've got to walk your way through this, and you've got to figure out what do you believe and what are you going to adhere to. Here's another interesting thing that nobody's talking about is that in the very beginning, when hardcore Islamists with ties to terrorism were sailing back in 2010 from Turkey to Gaza, there was a blockade in Gaza Strip from them that was imposed by two forces, two entities that joined together to impose the blockade of the Turkish influence that was coming in 2010. And that was Israel and Egypt. Yes, Egypt. And so one must wonder why does an Arab country, the Egyptians, why are they so hard on the Palestinians of the Gaza Strip? And why are they so hard on those people? And so when you're trying to lay out the facts and you're trying to explain history and the context of it, what you realize very quickly is that you're kind of a lone figure, and it can be forlorn and sad because you're trying to raise your voice in a world that is screaming and chanting and protesting based on the lunacy of their own emotions. And so I want to use my time here to encourage people to be that lone lion, to be that stalwart figure of a past who is a deep and critical thinker. And to think critically, you have to give it time. It takes time. And, I saw a picture the other day, and Thomas is going to put it up. So if you're watching this, to me, this is one of the saddest pictures in the internet. In 1925, a man was flying from Casablanca to Dakar. And as the plane crossed the Atlas Mountains, he took a photograph of a Barbary lion. Now, the Barbary lion, also known as the Egyptian lion, was the mightiest of all lions. And it was a renowned beast. It was coveted in the gladiatorial games. It was something that was, you know, you have sharks, and then you have these massive megalodon sharks, you know, teeth as big as a pie plate. Well, the lions were humongous animals. Go read it. In fact, when the Roman gladiators fought lions in the Colosseums, it was always a Barbary lion they would fight. It was the largest, fiercest of lions, and it had a mane more pronounced and spectacular than other types of lions, especially the ones that we know. Barbary lions likely developed their long hair and manes because of lower temperatures in the Atlas Mountains than in other African regions, particularly during the winter. Now, species die out all the time, and there's more species that are dying, but some creatures make you feel something, and the Barbary lion is on such a scale. Okay, it's a remnant of an age long forgotten, a piece of antiquity, the true Lion King. And then in this picture, there you see him walking in the sunset, a mighty Egyptian lion. He has no pride, no wives, no cubs. He's alone. He's kind of the last of the breed type thing. And as he walks away, you wonder, is he aware that he's alone? Is he aware that his species is dying out? Is he searching for someone else of his species somewhere in the vast desert? What's he looking for? And to realize that this was the last known spotting or sighting, and certainly the last photograph ever of one of these lions, and he's completely alone. And I have that picture in my office, and there are times that you have to realize that you have to go it alone. You have to get out there and look. And so they were stunned by, what's he doing out there? What's he doing? Where's he going? Why is he up and left where he is? Because he's searching. He's searching for something of similitude. Iron sharpens iron, the Bible talks about. And so all of us in this culture, we're looking for people who can speak the hard truths in an articulate way that makes sense. Now, I want to encourage you that it is incumbent on you to be a deep and critical thinker and to take a rational approach to the challenges that we have in our world today. I want to encourage you not to get your news in one-line sound bites, Instagram posts, 280 character tweets. But I will say that of all of the social media, Twitter or X seems to be my favorite place to kind of unveil a stream of consciousness. So if you do not follow me on Twitter and you're not on X and you want to be, or you want to follow kind of a stream of consciousness that's posting half a dozen times a day generally, about everything from the book I'm reading to the present thought I'm having about a scripture that I'm working, to the headlines of the Wall Street Journal, or what I'm thinking while I'm watching the United Nations have their Security Council meeting or whatever. And Thomas will put that in the description below if you want to be a part of that and follow that. But, I want to encourage you to read voraciously. Your brain is a muscle. You have to work it out, okay? For it to grow, you have to deploy lots of training. You ever go to the gym, you probably know how hard it is to lose weight, to keep in shape, and, to build muscle. Your brain is exactly the same way. I want to walk through a little bit of encouragement to kind of stimulate and prod you to read, to read not just news and not just headlines, but get a book about Israel, get a book about Hamas, really delve into it, okay? And I'm going to give you a book recommendation. It's like a primer for Israeli history, modern Israeli history, and it's brilliantly written and composed. It's an easy read. You can get it on Kindle, you can get it on ebooks, or you can order it. And then next week I'm going to give you another book recommendation from The Sun. I'm reading it right now, and I want to make sure that I kind of parse through it all before I recommend it. And so when I'm recommending you a book, I've really read it and kind of studied it out. But next week I'd like to recommend a book, providing that the second half is as good as the first half, from one of the Hamas founders, the leader's son, who defected from Hamas and went to Western civilization and just said, you guys, they're out of their minds. And so to get the full understanding of what you're dealing with in your world, in your culture, you have to read in depth. We have to feed our brains with constant challenges. If I was, I've watched men that are polyglots, and I have great respect for men and women who speak multiple languages, but there's also people that are polymaths. And these people, that they not only, like a polyglot speaks multiple languages, but a polymath is somebody that is so wide-ranging in their subject matter that it's almost like no matter what side, you can just tap them and off they go. They're deeply read, and I have great respect for them. Thomas Jefferson was a man like that. Henry Kissinger, Albert Einstein, Stephen Hawkins, Thomas Sowell, and many others. But even in their old age, they remained extremely sharp. And one of the best ways to remain sharp is to continue reading. Reading books is one of the best ways. Listening to audiobooks, podcasts, interviews, watching documentaries. All these are good ways to challenge your thinking. But reading is a different type of a game. Reading is not like watching something. When you read, let me read you how Jordan Peterson describes reading as opposed to superficially watching something. Quote, a book is like a portrait as opposed to a photograph. A photograph is a click. That's that. A portrait, you layer it on. Layer on another layer, and then put another layer on it. You still have the same image. You still have the same person. You have the still same subject matter. But there is a depth to it. A book is the same. It enables you to think, rethink, think, and rethink the subject. So that by the time you go deeper in a book, and you go deeper in critical thought by reading a book than you do any other medium, that is, neuroscientists have substantiated that claim. You become an expert in a niche as opposed to YouTube videos where you are concentrated more on the visuals, the storytellings, the animations, and the quick snapshot decisions that are made. In a book, as you delve deeply into it, your brain is constantly challenged. Your brain is under stress to remember, where did I stop and where am I picking up now? What was this again that I was, it wants to understand. It fights to learn. It learns. It fights to learn again, and it learns to fight. It becomes sharper every single day. So what are the main features that help someone's brain expand? Reading is changing your mind. I have never read a book that it did not change my mind to some degree. Now, it may not have totally refaced and resurfaced the whole argument, but I've always learned something. And sometimes I learn something even when I'm reading an opposition piece. I'll learn something about me. I'll learn that I don't have a good articulation of it, or I need to explain it better, or I need to have an answer for the hope that lieth within me. Okay? And this, to be exact, when you get into this, reading is changing your mind, not only in thought, in general thought, but physically it's changing your mind. Okay? I'm going to read you something from a neuroscientist. Using MRI scans, in my research, I have confirmed that reading involves a complex network of circuits and signals in the brain. Like our muscles, as your reading matures, those networks also get stronger and more sophisticated. To be exact, the left part of our brain, which is associated with language reception, is under stress during reading, which helps the brain learn. And if this can continue for several days, let alone weeks, let alone months or a year, if you are constantly reading, your brain is constantly learning. And as a result, you are becoming physically altered through the pathways of your own consciousness. Now, you kind of think of your brain as kind of a gym session, okay? No wonder it's so difficult for us to keep applying ourselves. It's just easier to grab, the Cliff Notes. It's easier to just go on YouTube and watch someone talk about it. It's easier to just, kind of let's just watch somebody preach about that chapter instead of us sitting there and critically thinking about it. I'm going to read you a couple things that the neuroscientists are saying. And here are some other features that come along with the discipline of reading. You will encounter new words while reading. Always you will. The more you read, the more you will be exposed to new or unfamiliar or unused words. And as a result, your mental dictionary will improve. That's the first thing that you will notice after reading for a long while. And you'll start using those new words in conversations, which helped immensely deliver new ideas in creative ways. This improves the success rate of a great discussion because you start communicating more effectively. Okay? There's a subsidiary thing. Okay? You'll notice a huge difference in your writing. Okay? Your writing style will change in 3 months of reading, they say. Articulating your thoughts will become more easily, expressing yourself more accurately. Now, the other thing that will happen if you begin to read, okay, is you will explore new worlds. You'll get an imagination boost. Yes, you will have to separate yourself. You will have to give yourself ample time to read. Set aside time to read every day. And as you do this, you'll realize you're always traveling. You can sit in the room, but feel like you've gotten out. You've been somewhere. And this is probably one of the biggest reasons that reading is important to me, because I have not mastered time travel as yet. So as soon as I get time travel figured out, then off I go. I don't have, but reading is for me traveling across millennia to revisit the Pax Romana or Palestine and Judea and Samaria of the days of Jesus. It's interesting to me to visit the geopolitical structure and ramifications and consequences of Daniel the prophet's day in the Babylonian Empire. So you will be traveling in the realms of the books you read. So you will become less attached to the franticness of the moment. Now, here's another thing that you will get is because you time travel, you become less dramatic. You do less of the sky is falling thing. You do less of the alarmism that, oh my God, it's all coming to an end and what's going to happen now. And because you've been traveling through the Pax Romana and you've seen how corrupt and how seductive and how extremely and acutely secular that and paganistic and pantheistic was the Grecian Empire and the Roman Empire. You just start getting this faith of, oh man, if they could have a church then, we're good now. Reading the Roman spirit and the Roman zeitgeist will give you and inoculate you to fear and fear-mongering in the current and present place. It's like you're free because you begin to read and say, if Jesus could establish a church in this pathetic, God-forsaken, God-abandoned. Oh, wait, it's not God-forsaken. It's not God-abandoned. It's actually God came to the world at that time. Well, my goodness. If he can do it then now's a no-brainer. Most of the stuff that the leaders of Jesus' day were committing every night is illegal today. You'd go to jail for it. You'd be harangued for it. But it was nothing. And so Jesus chose the worst of time to bring the best of news. So what happens is that it doesn't matter what book you're reading, you're almost always on a ride. Okay, it can be a biography, a memoir, but you're in the shoes of the author. You're experiencing someone else's worldview and life, and you become. You can even associate yourself with the heroes of the story to the degree that it boosts your own self-confidence and your own faith and your own joy. Okay? And so this is important. It's very important. And so you're taking thoughts and ideas from different time periods and different worlds, and you're importing them into your society. How awesome is that? What a huge privilege it is to be a reader, to live in a world where I have access to books. Now, here's another thing. You will be able, much of the HDA attention, what is it now? ADHD. You know, I had that too. I had that, and I still have a bit of that. But through reading, I get to discipline, I get to focus, I get to look at something from a different way. And one of the scariest ongoing pandemics of today's world is the overuse of social media. YouTube, almost like a zombie. They just go on and everything someone says, there's no filter, and you know you're learning how to get everything in 1 minute or less. And I think they told me one time I was trying to do an Instagram post, and they said it's got to be under 45 seconds. Nobody's going to watch it if it's over 45 seconds. I'm like, dear God, how in the world do you say something? You know, we're in a world where it's just get it out in 280 characters and get it said in under 45 seconds. How shallow are we going to become? Our attention span becomes extremely, dangerously short. And so you almost are a generation of junkies, a dopamine hit by every little cross-examination of every shallow thought, premature conclusion, and hypotheses or news source. That's exactly why we should be reading books, because the process of reading is slow. You can't, like some people ask me all the time, how fast do you read? I said, as slow as I can. Well, who's trying to read fast? The whole exercise is so that I can truly get the information and I can truly inculcate it. I can let it, I can marinate in it. I can write notes in the margin. I can underline. I can ask the author questions. I can challenge my own presuppositions. How fast do I read? I read as slow as I can. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm just like, cat in the hat reader. I'm not trying to act like I'm a slow reader. I just try to read slow. And that's exactly why we should be reading books. Because when you're reading, you got to be 100% focused on the process, right? That's why you got to be asking yourself questions. What do I think about this? What do I think about that? I know I'm going long. I know we've hit 30 minutes and I got to go. But I underline things in different colors. Blue means I don't know enough about this subject. I need to grow on it, learn on it. Red, I love it. Copy and paste. I'm going to use it in a speech, a lecture, a podcast, a Twitter post. I'm going to use it in a sermon. I just love it if it's red. I'm going to use it one way or another. Green, I hate it. I disagree with it. I fight back, push back, ask questions, challenge the assumptions of the writer. That way, and then black is just interesting to me. It just caught my eye. And then I'll highlight, and my highlighters have a different rationale and reasoning. Now, I've got a little card that each one of my children will get, and my wife will get at my passing. And they'll get these little cards. They'll be able to open up any book I've ever read and say, whew, Dad didn't like that. Or, man, he really, really liked that. Or, yeah, I remember when he preached about, Jews not eating pork. He used this section of a book on parasitic diseases. Yeah, I remember that. And so I'm trying to make my library this essence of where I've been and what I've thought and what I've accumulated through my life. And that's why my papers will be just as important as my library, because my papers coincide with my library. Okay? But be that as it may, you got to be 100% focused. And if you can be asking yourself questions, challenging your presuppositions, all that's going to make you be a better reader. The only way to understand the material in front of you is to exclude the distractions and the constant jabber in your head. And we can't concentrate on our works, our lives, even our hobbies we can't concentrate on, because at the present moment, we are inundated by distractions. People are slowly realizing the depth of this problem. Introducing reading into your life will help you fight that. It will help you go out and try to find something, someone that is a deep and critical thinker. And if you do, you're going to sit down with people who are the most interesting people in the room. Okay? Optimize your reading list. Ask people, what should I be reading? Even I just read 9 of the most dangerous leadership books on planet Earth. I read all 9 of them. And I don't like any of them. I disagree with all of them. They're all horrible. I think I did a podcast on the one called 48 Laws of Leadership or whatever. I hated them. But I read all 9 of those books, because so much of that is inculcated in the way the Gentiles think and the way the secular world makes their assumptions. And so I'm challenging you, read. And if you can't read books, then at least start reading newspapers. At least start reading peer-reviewed journals. At least start reading something where you have a sense and source of a moral compass in you that says this is helping me understand a deeper thought life. And so, because we are the counterculture, we always have been. That's why we were persecuted and martyred throughout the ages, because all through this, we were persevering. We were the counterculture because we were the deep and critical thinkers. And so you may feel like that lone lion who's out there, and you are a vanishing breed, last of a breed, that you are a diminishing class. But I encourage you, you're not. read together. Our college and career group here in Truth Church, not always, we're not right now, we're just going through parts of some things on leadership. But last semester we read books together, and I don't care, you don't have to be a young person. If you're going through college or you're young and you got a career and your life's ahead of you, you better get around people who's talking into your empty head, trying to shake you and challenge you and say, what are you doing with your life? And so if you go to Truth Church, you need to be a part of college and career. You need to be challenged. You need to be made to read things and posit questions and challenge your own existing assumptions. And all of this creates a deeper thought, a deeper pattern to say, God, help me think more than just the superficial and the shallow. Because if I can't think, Jesus said, if you don't love them who you can see, you can't say that you can love me. And so by the same token, if I can't love and deal with the issues that are in my world, I'm probably not going to care much about the issues that are out of this world. And so it's important that we always remember who we are. We are the ones that are the counterculture. Christianity was built on not taking the bait, not taking the line. It didn't buy into pantheism. It didn't buy into paganism. It transcended all that and became wildly successful because it was free thinkers that were propagating the gospel in the most dangerous season and time that there ever was. And in the first 200 years of the church, there was epic growth, and you got killed for being in the church. But yet, because they were daily in the temple teaching, going house to house, breaking of bread and fellowshipping in the apostles' doctrine, there was an explosion of growth. And so I encourage you, don't just stay in your cave and die. Come out, move around and see, is there anybody out there that's resisting this stuff? Is there anybody out that's regurgitating it and standing up and speaking and trying to find a balance in a world that has gone full tilt? And I'm sure that you will not be like that Barbary lion who will walk itself into oblivion. I am sure, I am positive that the truth, the Spirit of God, will lead and guide you into all truth. And you will find others who are just as adamant, just as engaged to get out there, to learn, to chew on the hard issues and grapple with them. And so give attendance to reading the Word of God. Open your Bibles, meditate, have family discussions about the Word of God. Pray for light and illumination. But please, please, I beg you, for the love of God, don't let your brain shrivel and your thought life shrink. Work it out. Challenge it. Stress, make it go through stress. And the more you coddle your brain, I don't read books that big. I don't read new. Go ahead. Pretty soon, you'll find that your brain has grown flabby and unable to concentrate and unable to keep a coherent thought. And you're just bouncing all over the world thinking about other things. Start reading small booklets. Start reading pamphlets. Start reading newspapers. Force yourself to read an article through page 1 to page 6 to force yourself to grapple with the issues of life and think deeply. Force yourself to read a chapter of the Word of God and to mull over it, think over it, pray over it, write questions that challenge yourself. But for the love of God, don't just give up because you're tired and because you're weary. Keep on pressing, keep on searching, and the Spirit will lead and guide you into all truth.